Hey guys, how's it going? Will Dano here, editor and shooter for Origin Films. Today we're going to be talking about how to improve your graphics in your videos, whether it be for lower thirds, logos, or any types of animations. Most of the ideas we're going to be talking about today apply to any program that can do animations and deal with keyframes. We'll pretty much use the same types of concepts that we're going to cover today. I'm personally going to be switching back and forth between Premiere Pro and After Effects, but like I said, it doesn't really matter too much what program you're using. So without further ado, let's hop onto the computer. All right guys, here I am in Premiere Pro, and the first tip that we're going to be talking about is keyframe interpolation. And basically what that is the ability to change the speeds of animations within keyframes so that it gives you more dynamic looks to your graphics. So for example, let's say I wanted to animate this text from the bottom going up. So what I would do usually is I'll just go to the position, set a keyframe for when we're in the middle, and then go back to the beginning of the text and drop the text all the way to the bottom. Set the speed as needed, and we have a pretty janky animation of a text. And so one of the ways to make that smooth is by just selecting the keyframes, right-clicking, temporal interpolation, and switching it to Bezier. And that makes it a little bit smoother, but it's still not that smooth. It has too jagged of a feel to it. It's too abrupt. So what you can do instead is you can click on the outer keyframe and click Easy Ease In, and the inner keyframe, Easy Ease Out. And what that allows us to do is, if we zoom in here a little bit, you can go to that arrow and drop it down, and now we have a representation of the speed of this animation. Right now, if we take a look at it, it just kind of slowly stops a little bit. And so what we can do is we can further edit that. And so if I can change the speed of the animation, what happens here is in the beginning it's going to be slow, and then right away it's going to speed up. And what that looks like is this. And so with this tip, you can create a lot of different looks. I can even just do the opposite, and that'll give it a different type of ending to it. And I can just make it a little bit slower. And what we're doing here is it comes in pretty fast, and then it eases in a little bit slower over time. We're now going to move on to tip number 2. And the thing is, with this animation, it still looks a little bit sharp. It looks a little bit janky, and mainly because it doesn't have any motion blur. One of the easy ways to fix that, a lot of people, is they just go to After Effects and you can create the same animation. And usually in After Effects, it's just really easy to select the text layer and just turn on the motion blur for the composition and for the layer, and that turns on motion blur. But in Premiere Pro, you don't have that feature. And so what you have to do really is not do your animations on the regular text parameters. What you should do is you just go to Effects and get a transform effect. And in the transform effect, you can actually apply motion blur to your animations. And so I'll just do my animation here again. And the main difference here is we can just go here where it says use composition's shutter angle. We could just check that off and turn this number to 180 degrees. And that effectively is going to give us the same realistic type of motion blur that we would expect with fast text. Another thing you could do to make your graphics look a little bit better is by desaturating your colors a little bit more so that you can get a more natural look out of them. So for example, if I wanted to create a white background for my text here, I have a black text layer. I can create a white solid layer in After Effects or any kind of white background in Premiere. And what everyone does is you just go to white, for example, hit OK, and now you have a white background. Now, usually that's a little bit too jarring of a white, and so it looks a little bit nicer if you would just change the color to a little bit of a less white color so that it's leaning a little bit more towards gray, but only a little bit. And that right there gives it a much more pleasing look. It looks a lot more natural, and it has more of a professional corporate feel to it. So before, with the overly bright white, and after with the slightly dampened one usually looks a lot better. And you can apply the same thing with the text as well. Make it a little bit less black and more towards gray, ever so slightly, and that makes things look a little bit more natural. And same thing applies to pretty much all other colors. And so if I make this bald, if I want to make it red, usually you just go all the way to red and hit OK, but that's just too fake in my opinion. And so what you could do is just desaturate the red a little bit, or maybe bring the saturation down right here, just slightly. Maybe the brightness down a bit as needed. And now we have a much more pleasing red to look at rather than this kind of red. So that just kind of makes it a lot easier to have more natural colors in your graphics and give them a more professional feel. Other things we can talk about is how you can make your texts or your designs for your texts a little bit more appealing by just doing a few simple things. So for example, this is the lower thirds that I used in this video. If I go to the text here, you can see that it just kind of looks plain. And so what I did to it is I went to my name and I just bolded it. And that automatically gives it a little bit of a more polished feel because it feels like there's some more emphasis on different details and it makes it a little nicer and easier to read. The other thing I added is a little line that animates in right after everything else animates in. And what that does is, again, it just makes things easier to read and it gives it more of a polished feel. And I just did that by creating a white solid layer and just scaling it down to the size of a line and just zooming in and sizing it as I see fit, and going into the line and animating the position and opacity. And so it just animates in very easily. And those are two things right there that made this lower third look so much better than if this were not bolded and if there was no line. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new, and I look forward to seeing you in our next video.